Welcome to the Stackin Sats podcast presented by Force-Based Mining. I am your host, Plamenko. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Matthias Debernardini, a software developer based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who currently works on the Fedimint Project. In this episode, we discuss Matthias's introduction into Bitcoin, self-custody and hardware wallets, centralized exchanges, and much more. As always, this is not financial advice. We hope you enjoy this episode with Matthias Debernardini. So, I'm very happy to have you here today, Matthias. You are a special guest, not only because you're my friend, but because you are the first guest.
Yeah.
This is the first episode.
Happy to be here.
Really happy to have you here. And I guess, if you wanted to share a little bit to the audience about your background in the Bitcoin industry.
Sure. I mean, my involvement in the Bitcoin industry has, for the most part, just been at the pleb level, just using the tools, reading the documentation of software, reading blogs, books, listening to, podcasts, YouTube videos, just trying to learn how it works using Bitcoin, buying it, hodling it, spending it, selling it, trying to find merchants that will accept it, bugging merchants that don't accept it to accept it, but...
You're doing the Lord's work, man. You're doing the hard work.
It took me a while to finally learn that, just how difficult it really is to run a business. And, I would just bug people. It's when the credit card, the point of sale system wouldn't work, I was like, hey, do you guys take Bitcoin? And they would laugh because it's ridiculous to suggest to the cashier that she bring it up to her boss. Cashier doesn't fucking care. They're just there doing their job.
Yeah, they're happy that Square is just working fine that day and they're not having POS issues.
Yeah, so that was my experience. And then I started working at the this mining company, distributed ledger. They did some other stuff. And I was basically, just helping them bootstrap this cryptocurrency exchange that they had in Latin America. The twist to it was philanthropic. I started out doing customer support for them, and then just basically worked my way up to director of operations, which was really nice. Got to learn a lot. Not really doing that position anymore. Right now, I'm really an open source contributor, just trying to help all the amazing tools that are being built out there and just, keep pushing them forward, using them, giving feedback, writing code, testing code. And right now, that's sort of what I'm doing, looking to see if I can find a job, writing software, hopefully Rust software. That's actually one of my goals for 2023 is land a Rust developer position. And been doing that been writing Rust code for the Fedimint Project. We can talk about that later. But yeah, that's, been the extent of my experience so far. It's been a wild ride. Honestly, ever since I, decided to really, dig my heels into Bitcoin, it's just been great.
Yeah.
Mainly because of the people that you get to listen to. The interesting thing about Bitcoin is that it draws people that are able to take multiple different fields and sort of think about them holistically rather than just, have their own little special subject that, be their own little expert, which is, great. If some people are like that, that's very important. But, the world is really complicated and interconnected. And if you only look at it from one perspective, you can get the wrong idea of what's actually happening. And it's, really you want to contrast, fields with the fields that are adjacent to them. Energy, for example, is adjacent to macroeconomics and is adjacent to geopolitics. And so if you want to understand energy, you also kind of want to understand how macroeconomics works, how, what does the geopolitical landscape work? And the reason why, I bring this up is because Bitcoin itself is multidisciplinary. It's interdisciplinary, meaning that if you want to understand it, you need to, for sure, first understand how software works. To understand how software works, you need to understand how computers work. And you also want to understand how, security works. And that's just the beginning. And if you just understand that, you can get a good idea for like how literally what Bitcoin is and how it literally works. But you also want to understand, the context that Bitcoin exists in. That's, we find ourselves in 2023. We have US dollars, the dollar is the dominant currency in the world. Right now, the CPI print, just came out at 6.5%, which is, higher than what the people at the Federal Reserve would like it to be. So their idea is that they'll raise interest rates, make everything expensive, get everybody fired from their jobs so they don't have as much money to buy things. And then hopefully that will bring down inflation. I guess it's working, because it did come down like the previous month. It was like at 8-something%. So seems to be working. Hopefully it, works. Having inflation sucks. But Bitcoin exists in this world, and also it exists, in a world where you have people and people have their own incentives. And those incentives are, usually driven by some sort of self-interest or self-preservation.
That's super important there. What you mentioned with just like the individual, that's a really important philosophy within Bitcoin. But before that, you had brought up, this need to understand. And we go around to these conferences, and we feel really high on top of the world. And then we talk.
When we were there.
Yeah, when we're there, you and I, and we're going to Miami, and we're going to these different places. And then we're just like hit in the face with people who know way more than us.
Oh, yeah.
And people who, like you're saying, have been taking that time to kind of grasp how everything is interconnected. And you get that so much in the Bitcoin mining industry.
Oh, yeah.
Like from my perspective of working with logistics and procuring, parts and, the business that goes now globally with other countries and understanding how that works and knowing when my forwarder is going to give me the best deal, and all the nuances to that. So it's an important aspect because a lot of the times when people are really passionate about something, they feel this need to want to convince people to be like, I need to go out there and I need to make sure everyone knows. Yeah. And when you do that, you just get like absolutely like shat on. Like everyone will give you every reason why they don't fall into that. So what I really, like about having you here, and I think to our conversations over the year, is that, you ignore that noise, you ignore those people, and you focus just on understanding and learning more.
Yeah. The thing is that everyone's always trying to get you to join their thing. We're social creatures, and when someone joins like your thing, that's like a form of validation. It sort of like validates your beliefs. It's like, you're not alone. It's at least one more person. And like getting one more person into the party just sort of like makes you feel better. It's like sort of like why being an influencer is so popular. It's like I've all these followers, that just want to listen to what I have to say. And that's self-validating. Religion is like this. People would always try to get more people into their religion because it validated their religious beliefs.
Or cult, in the case of cryptocurrency.
Or Ponzi's.
Thinking of the last January when we went to that.
The NFT
strange,
party.
Like, mystic NFT party.
The Doge NFT, no.
Yeah, they made like the samurai Doge and they had us like in the prayer circle. They had like no alcohol. They were forcing us to engage in this like cultish experience. You get the religious experience for sure.
The only good thing about that party was the pizza. That was a big regret going there, but at least the pizza was very good.
Yeah, true.
Actually good. But anyways, and also it's just, it makes it like better. Like language, for example, the more people you get into the language, the more useful it is. That's why learning English, is so valuable to people that don't live in, the United States or, those English speaking countries.
Yeah.
If you live in South America and you learn English, a whole world of opportunity is now at your fingertips, especially with the internet. So, everyone's always trying to get more people into their thing, but so are other people. And so everyone's always competing to get other people into their thing. And it's just tiresome, people, especially now with like multi-level marketing schemes and like the crypto Ponzi's, it just gets so tiring. And people really learn about Bitcoin and, why it's important at their own pace. It's not really like something you can really force on people, especially here in the United States or in the West, where the financial system does actually work and where people do actually have property rights and rule of law. It's not a need or a must-have for them. Like other things are a must-have. And so they focus on those and they don't have enough time to like really learn about Bitcoin. So it's, for the most part, if you're, like an American or, even living in Europe, it's not really worth it to try to like go out of your way to explain Bitcoin to people. Like if people ask, they're curious, you can kind of give them like a little synopsis and, just give them like a bullet list. And then if, they're hungry for a little more, it's all on the internet, so just go and spend your time reading it. You don't have to get it from me. You can just get it. There's tons of YouTube videos and like amazing books, and podcasts, people on different social medias you can follow. Hopefully you're following the right people and not like scammers. That's often something that can go wrong is like, oh, I'm following this guy and he said this. And it's like, well, that guy's wrong and is either confused or trying to confuse you. But for the most part, it's just about, for myself, just knowing what I'm doing, and how I'm spending my time and what's important to me. So I don't, if other people have other stuff going on, do that instead.
Yeah, 100%. And it's taken a little bit of time to get to that point. But I definitely feel like that is just like, it's a more peaceful kind of resolution to your own life, to your own personal goals.
You want to like impress yourself, not for other people's sake, but for your own sake. If your sense of self-worth is dependent on other people, that's a really bad position to be in because you can't control other people. You can't control what they think of you, but you can control yourself. And, if you're happy with your progress, that's really all that matters. Trying to get other people to like care about you and stuff, that's just a good recipe for misery. Because people are weird. They have their own self-interest. They have other things, that are important to them, take up their time. And, spending your energy on making them happy is not that good of a way to spend time, unless they're like a, good family friend or good family or friend, like someone really important that you care about. That's a little bit different. But just like, random people on the internet, like, who cares? Like, you don't know anything about them. It could be like the weirdest person ever, or just someone dumb. And it's like, why would you waste your time arguing with them? It's just totally not worth it. Just focus on yourself, and just try to improve. And just who were you yesterday? Are you doing better, the same, or worse than that? And if you're doing the same, then that's probably okay. If you're doing worse, you probably want to change something up. And if you're doing better, then just keep going. And, eventually, if you really focus, eventually you'll just end up making so much progress, over like, 6 months or like a year, that you'll just be you'll be unrecognizable.
It's pretty strange because I've probably only been really thinking about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin for not even 3 years now. Like, just a little bit background of how I got into this position is, for me, it started during the pandemic. And, I just saw all these markets crash immediately. And from that, I started kind of just like researching a bit more about finance. I had...
it was so weird.
It was so weird, and it was just like a moment where no one was telling me to, but I felt like this is a good time to kind of buy into things like Tesla and Ethereum and Bitcoin and all these newer technologies. And, for me, it was a little bit of an influence from the people I listened to, people like Gary Vee. I was listening to Lex Friedman, and I have like these just like nostalgic memories of when he speaks with Vitalik Buterin, and they're speaking on some of these concepts of cryptocurrency, self-sovereignty. Vitalik is explaining quadratic economics in his interpretation.
Yeah.
And that just lit up so many sparks in my brain. And it really began this self-journey, a self-improvement in a lot of aspects of my life, but self-understanding to see that, even though I started off kind of being an accidental Ethereum shill, exactly. I was a bit more motivated and just like intrigued by the fact that you got to kind of like, hold your keys. It was about being able to spend digital money for, things that you weren't really able to do all the time and you took for granted. I was working at Whole Foods at the time, and eventually, like, stuff ran out on the shelves. Like, we experienced scarcity. Even if I had the money in my account, I couldn't go and buy things.
Yeah.
And that was a really scary feeling, which, really pushed me into learning more about crypto and Bitcoin. And through our conversations, really getting an understanding for why Bitcoin is the standard, essentially the digital gold standard of what cryptocurrency is supposed to represent. And you've had a lot longer of kind of like experience into this. And I would just really like to hear more about your introduction into Bitcoin and what kind of, what were the sparks for you that helped you, start pushing forward to understand this yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my first sort of experience with Bitcoin was reading about it on this website called Slashdot. It was something that I got from one of my engineering professors. He would tell us about it. So I started to go on there. And it was an article about Bitcoin being used, I think like in the Silk Road or as part of some website. I don't really remember. This must have been like 2013, something like that.
That's scandalous.
Yeah,
using the Bitcoin on the Silk Road.
Yeah, right. It was. I mean, it was Slashdot. So the nice thing about that website is that they're just like a very, as a matter of fact, oriented. They just like write stuff, and then if you like it, go do that. If not, just go to the next article. At that time, like, things weren't as clickbaity. I haven't gone on that website in a while, so I'm not sure what they're like now. But back then, it was like a really good place to like just catch up with like just technology and just nerdy stuff. And I was doing my degree in material science and engineering, so I was working at a lab. So I would just, during my break, just frequent that site. And then I remember, I Googled Bitcoin, and I saw this YouTube video, which was a commercial for Bitcoin that somebody had made. And it would basically explain like, what is Bitcoin? It's like this computer software that runs on, this distributed network of nodes. And in order to get Bitcoin, you either have to buy it or you have to mine it, and like,
sounds like an extension of like a RuneScape game.
yeah. I mean, RuneScape had a currency. That would have been a perfect shoe-in. I remember playing RuneScape, but the video basically ended with like, so what can you use Bitcoin for? You can use it to buy alpaca socks. And so there's this company in, I think they're in Maine or Vermont, somewhere like that, and they have a web store, and you can buy socks that are made from alpaca wool, and one of the payment methods is in Bitcoin. They're still up. You can still buy them, with Bitcoin. And what do you call it? I just thought that was so interesting, and immediately for me, at that point in time, I thought that, money was just this thing that was just used to represent gold. Like I literally thought, the numbers in my online banking was just backed by like a bunch of pallet of cash, and that pallet of cash was backed by a bunch of gold, in a bank. And I thought that's just how it worked because that's what makes sense to me.
Well, wait till you hear about this thing called legal tender, Matthias.
Yeah, legal tender and fractional reserve banking. And, I just saw it like, well, that's how it must work. Like, how could it work any other way? That would make no sense. Just happily living my life, just trying to, get done with school, hang out with my friends, and then I learned about Bitcoin, and it's like, one of the, from that Slashdot article, you just kept, just being more and more curious, just kept reading about it. I found the Bitcoin subreddit, and then from there, I would just find articles, and blog posts that people would post, and just kept learning and learning. And I remember I really liked the mining. The mining aspect just really, it just clicked. Like, I know that a lot of people say that the mining was like the last thing that they understood. Mm-hmm. But for me, the last thing I understood was like all the like cryptography and like all that stuff. For me, the thing that clicked right away was like, oh, mining. Like, yeah, you have to put in electricity, which costs you money to get. And from there, you can get the Bitcoin. So like that chain of value transfers like makes sense. And like, oh yeah, I already taken thermodynamics at that point. It's like, you can't fake energy, energy has to come from someplace. Mm-hmm. And, electricity has to come from somewhere. You can't pretend you have electricity. And like the power company, if you don't pay them, they'll just like shut it off. And you just run the electricity through these computers. They're called Bitcoin miners. Like, what? And I remember, just getting super interested into it and just like thinking, it's like, well, they're not going to let you do this. It's like, how, governments, how are you going to get other people to accept it? Governments like to keep like a, good grip on things. This would surely like throw a wrench in their operations of, keeping things in order. So like this is going to have to be done, out in the ocean, where there's no governments, and like little submarines, not little, submarines that are nuclear powered, something like that, which I'm not, obviously I'm not even sure that would work.
The engineer's mind. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I was just immediately drawn to the mining aspect because that's just what I understood. I'd taken like a programming class in Java, but like nothing with like understanding how like distributed systems work or computer security or cryptography or anything like that. Remember at that point, I really liked Excel. And like that was it's like, if I do programming, it's going to be in an Excel formula. Like that's all I need, for my labs. But
somewhere you offended Grant. Side note, our friend Grant loves using Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, and Google
Sheets. Yeah.
Google Sheets. And then I remember, asking, and so like I just didn't really think much of it, just because, I just didn't really think, one, like how would you get people to use it? Like money is useful when you can use it, and if no one's accepting it as payment, then like that's not that useful. So why would people buy it in the first place? And also just like the whole, I was a total statist back then, it's like, well, the government won't allow it, therefore it won't happen, and I just thought, it's like all these rules, like, how are you going to break the rules? What do you mean? Total statist.
That's so good.
Statist mentality. And, I also remember like, talking to my dad and being like, hey, have you heard this Bitcoin thing? Like, it's pretty interesting. Like, maybe we should get some. And, my dad, without even knowing what Bitcoin was, he probably like had heard of it or something like that. But he's like, $90 for a Bitcoin? No. That's too much. And I'll always remember that because I remember thinking, it's like, yeah, I guess maybe it is. I'll just wait for it to go down, and then get some more. And I never did. And and then I just kind of forgot about it, just focused on finishing school and getting a job and stuff. And then I had a friend that was like trading it, and he was doing like really well with it, and he was just kind of like educating me about it. And I remember it really clicking after the 2016 presidential elections, where Donald Trump was getting elected. And at that time, to me, like, Donald Trump just seemed like a total clown. I just he was just like the apprentice guy,
like a troll, or
not even like a troll,
just beyond that,
just a not serious person.
Yeah, sure.
Everything. I thought he was super funny, and but I didn't think of him as like a serious like leadership sort of like had no leadership capabilities.
Definitely.
And my sense of it at the time was that like the president, he like picks people to like control things, like the cabinet, and like he elects people to like run the currency, in the Treasury Department, in the in the Federal Reserve. But if the guy is like not serious, he's just going to also put not serious people into those positions. And the whole thing at that point just kind of like unraveled for me. It's like, wow, the most unserious person got put in the most serious position possible. And at that time, that was my impression of the US presidency. Like, that's weird. This whole thing seems like not that serious now. And at that time, my trader friend was like telling me about it. It's like, this Bitcoin thing, like I really need to like get into it now and like really learn it over. And actually another thing that I had been doing was I was reading Jim Rickards' book, The Road to Ruin. And wasn't there, I don't know if it was, it was The Road to Ruin or The Death of Money. I'll have to look back through my Amazon account to see which book I was reading, which one exactly. But it was the Jim Rickards book. And his whole thing was that, it was going to be the whole debt. The US is like loaded with all this debt, and eventually we're going to have to come pay for it, but the money's not going to come because it's like, mathematically and physically impossible to like make that much money, pay off all this debt.
Yeah.
And people are going to lose faith in the dollar, and they're going to need to go to something to like, actually hold value. And his thesis was people are going to flock to gold. And like, that's still his opinion, although I think he's kind of changed a little bit since then. Because like he used to be like, he was like a huge gold bull, like Peter Schiff, but did not take Bitcoin seriously, or like it just wasn't serious to him. And so reading that book, and understanding just sort of like how debt works, how the dollar works, and then seeing Donald Trump get elected, and my friend telling me about Bitcoin was just sort of like the perfect storm for me to like really get into Bitcoin and start learning about it. And I remember buying some, it going up, you feel like a genius, and you just keep, looking into it more. You download Bitcoin Core, you download Electrum, you start sending money around. It's super fun. For me, I remember the first amount of Bitcoin I bought was from this exchange that was accountless, meaning that like you would just send them money, and when you send them money, you would also have to send them a Bitcoin address so that they could send you the Bitcoin back. And this is unlike, for example, Coinbase or Kraken, where you have to like first make an account and then you send them money, but then they just send, they don't send anything. They just credit your virtual account on the exchange with, the whatever you just bought, right. Bitcoin.
They'll drop it into the wallets that you have through the account.
Yeah, it's really nothing. They just like update a database basically.
Yeah. It's almost like mobile banking in a sense.
It is basically. I mean, they hold your money, digitally.
But you were operating in something that
honestly I came across this exchange it was like the first exchange that came up, and I just thought nothing of it. It just made sense to me. It's
right.
like, oh, I'll give you the money and then you give me the Bitcoin. Like that makes sense. I would like that.
You tell that to a lot of people, and they would say that that's like the sketchy version as opposed to like the centralized exchange.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, well, what do I do? Where's my account? And like, how do I, get customer support and stuff? It's like this other account had customer support. Like, you still have like a transaction ID that they send you.
There's just a little bit more trust that's established between the two of you. I'm giving you my money. Well, you're giving me the Bitcoin.
Well, you do that anyways with Coinbase, but it's the thing with like Coinbase or Kraken is that it is not until you withdraw and so that you get the actual real Bitcoin. And so there's like the time that they hold your money is actually like much longer, whereas the time that the other people have your money is just until they can clear like the fiat payment and then actually send the Bitcoin internally. But once that happens, it's basically now your money. And so the amount of like time that they have, your money in their custody is like much shorter when you don't have an account. And it also forces you to sort of deal with the Bitcoin side much more closely. It's like, oh, I need to give them a Bitcoin address. What is a Bitcoin address? Oh, it's something a wallet makes. What is a wallet? Oh, it's a piece of software. I have to download it. And then the wallet will hopefully, this is the downside of like accountless exchanges, is that hopefully you like, click on the right link to like download the right wallet. And at that time I had a mobile wallet. It was called AirBlitz, I think it was. I think they've since rebranded to Edge Wallet. It was my first wallet. I thought nothing of it. It's like, okay, this seems good. It's what I used initially, and I got the Bitcoin address. I gave it to them. I sent them money. They sent me, the small amount of coin, that I bought, and I just thought, well, this is awesome. Now I have Bitcoin. I also remember like when it really clicked for me was I kind of realized, the way I get into this wallet is with a password, basically. And I know that these devices are not very trustworthy. Like, how do I know that Apple isn't like looking at my password? Like I don't know anything about this iPhone other than that it works and that I kind of own it. How do I know that the other applications or like some other virus on this device isn't going to, copy my password over to some other device, and then they can steal my coins basically, because like that's how I get to the coins is with this password. I just got really paranoid and just started doing more research. And that's sort of where at that time, hardware wallets were already a thing, because people had already been getting wrecked over and over again, in like the Mt. Gox and all this stuff. So like there were already companies established like Trezor and, they had their Model 1 wallet. And at that point, like Ledger was like also just starting up. And I remember buying their first wallet that they had. It was just like a little USB device. Looked basically just like a USB drive. And I still have it. And it's really cool because you just like plug it into your laptop. This little software graphical user interface pops up, and you just do the whole thing. And I remember like setting up the wallet and getting, because that little USB stick doesn't have a screen on it. It's just like a very small, like very low cost device. I think it was like $30, something like that. I didn't have that much Bitcoin, so I didn't want to spend that much money. I thought that was reasonable. But I remember setting up the device, and then the word, the mnemonic phrase, showed up on the screen. I'm like, get the same anxiety from like the phone. It's like, wait a minute, damn it. How do I know that there isn't like a virus or like that Apple isn't like looking and screen capturing my laptop screen at every moment, and now they don't also have my mnemonic phrase, my little password. And I thought it was a password at the time. I since learned it's not a password. But we'll call it that for now. It's like, damn it, like I need to figure out a way to like have this thing not happen on these stupid devices, that I trust so much. And then I went and got the Trezor, which has a screen built into it, and it shows you the words on the device, and so like to get to those words, like if my computer was infected, like they'd have to go through the USB cable somehow and then get the words and then pull them out somehow. And at this point, like I didn't know that much about security, but I knew that much, it's like somehow the information has to go, I'll tape off the webcam and, make sure that nobody can like shut the blinds to my room. That way there's like no camera anywhere. You're just super paranoid. And I remember,
you almost felt like the main Rami Malek and Mr. Robot. You got to take all the steps to get there.
Yeah. I hadn't seen that by then. I'd seen like a Snowden, that movie. So that was, I kind of had like an idea that like, all these computers, like they could be compromised or not. There's no way for me to prove it because I don't have those skills. So it's better to just like not take the risk. And the hardware device just seemed like so much more practical because like I was gonna go and like just get a laptop and never connect it to the internet and like figure out how to run Linux. And it's like, oh man, that's not like so much work. And I didn't have that much money, to like do that. It just didn't really seem like it was worth it.
Right.
So I got the Trezor and I just remember like the first time, like after I set up the ledger, doing like my first transaction between my mobile wallet, that AirBlitz wallet, and my Ledger wallet, and just getting like this, like, this dopamine rush, like, holy crap, I just like teleported a bunch of money from my phone to my laptop. And like back then I didn't understand really well like how the blockchain worked, or how, how Bitcoin worked. I thought like the money was in the device, and it kind of is in some way, but it's not really. And this is just sort of more like a semantic mix up. But I just thought that was so cool. And I just it was like a rush, it's like I'm totally in control. Usually I have to do this whole song and dance with PayPal and like use this very complicated website. And like, this was so easy. I just like click, make new address, pointed my camera on the phone to my laptop, hit send, and it just like popped up in like 10 minutes. It popped up instantly, but then it was like unconfirmed. I didn't know what that was. And you just do, little by little, you keep learning more and more. Thankfully, at that time, Andreas Antonopoulos already had like a pretty good YouTube channel. And he would explain lots of things. And he's like, I think still one of the best Bitcoin educators out there. Like his stuff has aged really well. I mean, a lot of the things he teaches are just timeless, with respect to Bitcoin and computer security. So he like, I'm just really happy that like he was the person I found and not like BitBoy, these other, fucking idiots that just scam people and love to confuse you so that they can, get you into their thing. So, just looking back, like I somehow just like managed to dodge every bullet and like just stay away and like find the right link, and just stay away from like the noise. And just like find the signal somehow. I don't know how I did this because like I talked to other people and they're like, yeah, I got involved and, I downloaded like the wrong wallet and I clicked on this link and then all my money was gone. Or I bought this other crypto thing and now I got rugged and now I don't have anything. Or I deposited all my savings into this exchange and the exchange blew up and now I don't have anything. It's like, man, how did I manage to avoid all this? Like, holy crap. And
that's a great upbringing into it, but also a lot of sketchiness. And ultimately, this is what turns people off of Bitcoin is that
it's all on you.
Well, it's all on you, but I mean, if we're looking at something like a microscope, we're in the closest view and we keep stepping out and out and out. You're using Bitcoin at this like Stone Age period, while at the same time, we're looking at about 40, 50 years of innovation to just get to the point of where we have Bitcoin. Milton Friedman talked about digital currencies in the 80s. Mm-hmm. A lot of the cryptography of finance comes from the 60s and 70s. This is all stuff that was building in 80s, and this is all stuff that's building up to this point.
Also the 90s too.
Where you can finally use like Bitcoin the way you did, and it still was like a disgruntling experience. But that is a really important experience for people who use Bitcoin because you have to get burned. You have to send transactions and lose that money.
Yeah,
we all go through it.
Yeah.
And I think this is ultimately what makes people really uneasy and skeptical about it, is that most people don't want to spend their lives having to be extremely paranoid that they're not going to get scammed. And I think this is a great point to start talking a little bit about exchanges and what is a big issue happening today. As we're getting closer to the scalability, and it's like, here's eToro, here's Gemini, here's Coinbase. Look, you can buy your own cryptos, you can invest, you can become your own day trader. Well, how is that working out for us?
Ultimately, trading is seen as like a really bad thing. Usually if you tell someone you're a day trader, like they'll like lose respect for you, because like, what do? You do nothing. But trading is really important. It adds liquidity to whatever markets, and liquidity, and it helps with like price discovery, to like actually figure out what is the real cost of something. So it is important. It's just that, people like make it their whole identity. And especially with crypto and Bitcoin, like a lot of people suffer from survivorship bias, where they're making all this money and they think it's because of like a really good trade that they made, and they made the good trade because they're so smart. It's like, well, you're just holding this really volatile asset that is being financialized because interest rates are like historically low, and you just happen to have held it. You didn't come up with the right triangles on the chart and crunch some numbers and figure out the risk. Like, you're just YOLOing all this stuff. Really all the traders are just YOLOing.
Your monkey brain buys low and it sells high and you get lucky.
It's like, you think you're so smart, with all these triangles, and I'm sure they'll like help you. The people that are really good at it, I'm sure they are doing like proper risk management and all this stuff, but like, for the most part, everybody just like YOLOs, and they eventually just get wrecked.
Yeah, and that's not what Bitcoin is about. Like, you can make that about Bitcoin, but I feel like these exchanges selling this idea that, if you join in, you're also going to become financially rewarded is a really risky kind of statement to be telling people. Ultimately, people like you and I are thinking about Bitcoin in 40 years. I always say that this isn't inevitable. It's not a probable. And when we look back to these moments, we're not going to be talking about how sketchy all the opportunities were. We're going to be talking about how stable and amazing this technology was.
Yeah. And a lot of exchanges are, the reason why it's so sketchy is because there's no rules for this stuff. And these exchanges are made by entrepreneurs that, for the most part, in my opinion, like, I do believe that they had some level of good intention at some point when they started. At least that's what I like to think. Definitely not all of them, and some people do think that they're doing good, but in reality, they're just doing bad. But these people are starting these businesses where there are no rules, and the thing is that, like, you can't wait around for the rules to exist and then do your thing. If you have an idea, not the entrepreneurial mindset, and you think you can make some money in some way, if you wait around for rules, then it's just not going to happen. You have to just go do your thing and then just beg for forgiveness later. It's like, well, there's no law that says I can't do that, So, and like with this stuff being so new, there was no existing rule that like could apply. And so you have people just, just figuring things out, doing it, in as cost effectively and as quickly as they can. And yeah, shit blows up all the time. It's gotten much better. But a lot of these exchanges that have been blowing up, it's just really careless people that probably thought that they were doing good. Although obviously, at the Mt. Gox levels and at the FTX levels, like they see the dollar signs and then their like brain just like goes into like it's better if I have that money. It's better if I have more money and then I can spend it on good things.
The nootropics probably weren't helping with their regular day-to-day
SBF. Yeah. Right. He had the whole effective altruism thing, just so funny. It's like it'd be better if I had that money because then I can use it to do good things. Like
sponsor the Miami Heat arena and take billions from people. Yeah, no, I agree. You ultimately can't have certain people holding millions of
it's just there's no checks and balances. Like whenever you have a custodian involved, you need to have some sort of checks and balances or some way to keep them accountable. And usually you as like an individual, it's really hard to keep other people accountable. You usually just have to have like a government organization or like thugs or something, that can go after the guy and like break his legs or something. But you as an individual, you either have to trust them and if they wrong you, then you just have to like, you just take it. Which is why self-custody is so important because it's just better to like not be in that position in the first place and just focus on yourself and do whatever you can to eliminate all those risks and first be aware of the risks and then do what you can to either eliminate them, hopefully, or just manage them to the best possible level. Usually you can't get rid of all risk, but you can take, lots of steps to make sure that, the risk is very unlikely, and if it does happen, it's not that bad.
Right.
And you ideally like put yourself in a position where like if stuff does go wrong, you have some kind of fail safe, some sort of escape hatch, where if the bad thing happens, it's not totally catastrophic, and there's like no way to recover. And that's what happens with custodians. Like you get catastrophic failures, and there's nothing you can do to recover that. Like, if, for example, like best case scenario, the custodian loses the keys, just dumb blind luck. They didn't have proper backups, totally like honest mistake, still, pretty reckless to be a custodian and, lose keys like that. That should absolutely not happen. But I could see that happening. If something like that happens, you want to, you just don't want to be in that position. And that's just best case scenario. Like, what really happens is they just want to have your money and they just run away with it.
Right.
Or they like lend it out to multiple people and then all of those people at the same time like demand the money back. And it's like, well, I don't have that much money. And now I don't have any, and now I can't pay you back, which is what happened in FTX, basically.
Sure. It's like our modern bank run. I feel like there's some pretty practical ways to still use these centralized exchanges.
Well,
like
absolutely.
Personally, I'm not going to say I don't have a Coinbase account, like
I don't.
Like there's, I mean, you go super
I have other
hard
accounts.
into it.
I have other accounts.
But I'm just saying, like, in general, like, you can go as skeptical as you want with it. But I think there is a good practical way where you can be smart with your money.
So,
Matthias.
Yeah. I mean, well, you can't get away from the centralized exchanges anyways.
Right.
Like, so they're like, a big promise, supposed promise of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies that everything's going to be decentralized, but you can't do that, and at a certain point, you do need to centralize exchanges. That's just kind of what I've learned, but you really want to do your best to avoid them as much as possible.
No, totally. And, it doesn't mean that you're always going to be able to avoid them, but it definitely means you should understand that keeping your money on Coinbase is not a good move.
No.
Having MetaMask to move crypto, sure, have that as like one little thing, but to keep your money on these wallets that, have a very high chances that one, the money isn't actually there, or two, you're going to have a security breach.
Yeah.
These are just some of like the simpler ways to go about it. Like you can go as far as having like a hardware wallet, like, you mentioned Ledger, Trezor, there's a cold card, and then there's also like wallets on your phone where you can use for like Lightning, like Moon, or Wallet of Satoshi, or Phoenix. There's a lot of ways to kind of get the keys in your hands and kind of have a little bit more control.
And I mean, at the end of the day, it's software that we're really talking about, and software is extremely flexible. It's really just, you're mainly just limited by, how good you are at shipping software and what actually makes sense. But for the most part, like there's a whole spectrum of possibilities when it comes to dealing with Bitcoin. And someone has made a solution to fill every little, ecological niche, ranging all the way from, really secure, devices that are purpose-built just for this, embedded devices such as like the hardware wallets, or, even you could say a laptop with like Tails, which is a security-focused, privacy-focused operating system, or, just like, you could even, if you have the skill, make your own operating system that you've like compiled yourself all the way from zero. And, you're just running it on like a ThinkPad where, it's like from the year 2010. So it doesn't even have the microkernel, the micro engine, the Intel micro management engine built into it. And, you've like desoldered all the radios from the laptop, and, it's never been connected to the internet. And, that level of paranoia, you put in your own entropy, like that level of paranoia, all the way to having like Coinbase. And in between is like you're using your mobile device, or you have a hot wallet on your laptop, or some combination. Because I mean, you can combine all these things too. And it's really, really flexible. And it's really just comes down to figuring out what works for you. First of all, what is your situation and what makes the most amount of sense for you? Like what are your actual goals? And then how can you best use all this technology to meet those goals? And first of all, people need to have goals. Sometimes they can't even formulate those. So that's kind of hard, to figure out what you need to do if you don't even have an end goal. What is it that you want?
Especially in terms of finance.
Especially in terms of finance, yeah.
People who don't have any retirement plan or think about it, or savings.
It's like, do you want to buy a house? Do you want to have a family? Or, you need money right now? You need to figure out what your situation is. And then once you do that, okay, you can do that. But then how can you use this technology to meet those goals? And what makes the most sense, and what's going to cost the least amount of money, and cost you the least amount of time? That can be pretty difficult, especially if you're not sort of technology oriented. Thankfully, though, I mean, for the people that are listening, if you are in that situation, what I would recommend is in person, go to your local Bitcoin meetup and just ask questions. Get a sense for what the person is like in person. Don't go trusting like YouTube videos. And just like explain to them your situation. Pretty much always you'll have a local Bitcoiner that'll be very happy to help you and explain, the wide range of possibilities. Yeah. And give you, a finite set of, what you could do. And then you just got to pick one of those. And, if they're really good, if they're really very aware of the space, then they'll give you lots of options ranging from like very expensive to very cheap, and very complicated to very easy and convenient. So So it's really just finding out, what are your goals and what kind of risk are you okay with? Is this 5% of your net worth? Is it 100% of your net worth? If it's 100% of your net worth, you don't want to put that in Coinbase. Coinbase loves to tell people that they can't withdraw. They do this all the time. It's like, oh, we have a problem with like your KYC information, or like, hey, you need to re-verify, or the service is down or something, or any kind of thing. They always come up with excuses, and you got to deal with their customer support. If it's your whole net worth is with them, that's a terrible position to be in. So this is, what risk management comes into play. It's like, don't put all your coins in Coinbase.
Right.
Put in like 5%, 1%, in my opinion, 0%. There's tons of other exchanges now, thankfully. Like they're very high quality. They're fast, they have good fees, they have lots of features. They actually like Bitcoin, like Coinbase. But it's really just figuring out, and this is sort of where people are like, no, I don't have that time. I don't have that energy. This seems way too complicated. I can't. I have like other stuff to do, and so they get kind of turned off. But like they see the gains. Other people making tons of money, and it's like, well, I need to do that too. So they'll make compromises, and this is where like the FTXs and the Coinbase, horror stories, Mt. Gox horror stories come into play.
Celsius, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I just have to like click a few buttons and send them money, and I can like retire next year. Like that sounds awesome, everybody gets told that, and then they go, I can make 6%, like 10% interest. Like I'm getting 0 right now with the bank, and it's like, yeah, but where's the interest coming from? It's like, what are they doing?
Money doesn't grow on trees.
It comes from someplace always. And this is sort of like, why Bitcoin mining is so important, is because it's very obvious, where the Bitcoin are coming from. They're coming from an ASIC, and you need to put electricity into the base ASIC. And if you don't do that, then the money doesn't come out of the box.
Right. Like I think a good analogy for, storing money, or storing crypto, whether it's like on a hot wallet. Hot wallet is probably going to be more towards like your centralized bank. You're going to your local bank, you're keeping your money there. You like that because of the simplicity of it. You like it because it's safe, it's stable, and then when you're looking at something like cold storage, we're going a little bit dirtier, a little bit more gangster. We're shoving cash in our couches. But the thing, in some sense you are. The thing is like
in the US. That's seen as criminal.
It's seen as criminal. And what can potentially happen when you do that is, you can have a house fire. You can still lose your own assets by putting them in the couch. I personally like the Harry Potter Horcrux strategy, which
what is that?
It's just like, so Voldemort, he can't be killed unless you like break all these Horcruxes, these little pieces of him where he put his soul into. And I almost see like the best way to store Bitcoin and your crypto is in little Horcrux strategies. So you have bits and you have them in different places, and you have different strategies for where you're putting what. You can go as far as like creating like a good night, bedtime story, where you're encrypting your keys into the story. There's a lot of ways to go with it. And ultimately, it's how safe do you want your money to be? Like this will be centralized. You will be able to get it off Coinbase. But like we've been saying, here's some of those potential issues.
Yeah. And just like two things very quickly. First, I thought you were going to go into like multi-sig. But what you were just describing was just split up. Like maybe you have like 5% or 1% in Coinbase. Maybe you have a little 10% in your Electrum wallet or your Bitcoin Core wallet or some other self-custodial wallet. Maybe you have some other in a really, the rest in like a super secret. And these are just like hypothetical numbers that you just got to figure out. It's about risk management, right? It's like you got to manage the risk that's appropriate to your situation, and that is appropriate to the amount of Bitcoin, that you're storing relative to like how much of it that you own. And
how much of it are you flowing with? How much of it are you using for practicality?
Yeah, it's like, are you paying bills with this stuff? Do you have like a liability that needs to be met very, very soon? Then you probably don't want to keep it in like a super secret secure bunker in Antarctica, because it's going to take you a while to get there.
Right.
And but for like your 20 year, the amount of Bitcoin you want to store and be able to access in 20 years, yeah, maybe the Antarctica solution, if you can pull that off, which would be super cool. Or, when I say Antarctica, is like, just a very difficult place to get to, very inconvenient.
Right.
Could be, maybe you have some property in the country, or you're somewhere else. There's and everything in between.
Right, you have property,
or a private vault.
Right.
Maybe a very inconvenient part of your house, that you want to store it in, that in order to get to, you have to like destroy that part of that house, so it's like a one-time use.
Right. You can physically hide your seed phrases.
You can get very creative, but the important thing to do, and this is sort of why it gets complicated, is you also want to manage the complexity. And this is actually a thing that the complexity is more dangerous than the actual security risk, and is actually a big reason why people end up losing their coins. So that needs to be said. And, people, you want to make it hard, but you also want to make it simple. Right. And this is where people kind of give up. It's like, fuck it. It's like way too much work. I don't want to think. Don't make me think, this is really what needs to be balanced. There's lots of solutions. What you really should do is look at what other people are doing, and then try to take little bits of what you like and combine them in a way that you're comfortable with, and then dry run it and test it. Make sure you can still access it. Use the standards. Like I will say it again, use the standards. The standards are good. They work for a reason. They've been scrutinized by many, many people. They've been used to very effectively secure a lot of money by a lot of people. And so they work. I'll just name off the standards that the important ones, and that's BIP 39. There's others that are involved as well. But really, what we want to do is you want to download a self-custodial wallet, and you want to make sure that it's BIP 39 compliant. Now, if it doesn't have that, doesn't mean it's a bad wallet. Not necessarily, but probably, yeah, actually.
So what is BIP 39? Some sort of like a security protocol, or?
Yeah, it's a standard. BIP stands for Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. Typically, this is sort of how like these kinds of technologies get enhanced. Is somebody will just propose a way, because there's no really like central sort of like command center, that like makes choices on behalf of other people. What in the case of Bitcoin, the same is true for like the internet. Although in the internet you have like RFCs,
sure,
you requests for change, and people can choose to adopt it or not, for better or worse. But with Bitcoin, there's this thing called Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, BIPs. You can find them online. There's a long list of them. Somebody just manages. It's basically just like a list of them, and anybody can make them. For whatever reason, it doesn't even have to be like a software thing. It can just be like, we should use this word to describe this situation. It can be even as simple as that. Mm-hmm. And BIP 39 is the 39th BIP. It was made by the Trezor guys, and the whole point was to how can we get these crypto passwords. They're not passwords, we call them that because that's what we're used to calling them. They're public and private key pairs that you need to store. And how do we back these up to pen and paper, and in a way that like people can think about them in an easy manner? Like we're dealing with like ones and zeros, which are super annoying, and like for humans it's not natural at all. For computers it's great. But for humans, it's not. And BIP 39 is basically the standard that it's used to convert a seed, so a ones and zeros, to a bunch of words. And the standard just basically says how you like take each little chunk of the ones and zeros and convert them to a word. And then the word is like an English word. They're carefully chosen so that they're very easy to like pronounce and also very short. And the whole point of that is so that like you can make a mnemonic phrase with it and you can more easily memorize it. And then you can convert the seed back to the ones and zeros very, very easily. And so it's just something that like the human will deal with. Another point of them was so that you could like say it over the phone in case you wanted to transfer the mnemonic seed to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why they had this, because the Trezor guys had this hardware wallet, and they wanted people to be able to store the backup of the seed to pen and paper, and that was in case that the device would stop working. You didn't want to rely on this electronic device to store that information, because while it is carefully designed and well manufactured. By well-meaning people that are very experienced, it's still an electronic device. Yeah. And
it's still prone to an EMP bomb or any sort of thing that
just like manufacturing defect.
Literally a drop of water.
Yeah, a drop of water. These things can just stop working for any reason. Mm-hmm. And so you just don't want to trust that. And so pen and paper, super simple. And BIP39 basically is just like, the standard to go back and forth. So if you don't have that, you have some other standard, and it could be that this standard that this other wallet developer, if it could be that it's not a standard, it's just some harebrained scheme that this developer invented on their own, and like maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Most people are completely unfit to make this distinction, and so they just shouldn't even try. In my opinion, this is why you should just stick to the standards. Mm-hmm. Standards are good. So you want to find something that's self-custodial, ideally a very popular wallet. I personally can recommend Sparrow Wallet, though the Bitcoin Core wallet is, also works. I don't think it's that great personally. It's more if you're like a developer, then it's a good wallet. But if you're just like a normie pleb, there's other better wallets. But then, make sure that it's compliant, meaning, and the reason why you want to do that is because you might like generate the seed with that wallet, but then if the software like stops working, for example, like everybody updates to like Windows 12 or like Mac OS, 20 or some version of like Ubuntu 30, in the future, maybe that software developer like isn't around anymore and hasn't, made sure that the software works on these newer operating systems. If it's BIP39 compliant, you'll very likely be able to find another piece of software that can read those words and convert them back to the seed, and generate all the private keys and public keys that you need to spend your Bitcoin, and you can get your money back. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to trust, and it's sort of like this ubiquitous standard where you can use the seed not just in one wallet, but in many wallets. In fact, any wallet that supports BIP39 will be able to import that seed and then give you access to your funds so that you can spend them in the future. Because, holding Bitcoin, it's not enough to just like, know that you own it. You also have to have the ability to spend it. That actually is what ownership means, the ability to give it to somebody new. So BIP39, self-custodial wallet, ideally popular. Make sure you get the right link. I do want to say Google is your friend, but that actually is not true. You just want to be careful. There's unfortunately no really good way to really check that you're getting the right piece of software unless you just cross-reference links and ideally digital signatures. Though that's another ball of wax. But you like want to ask someone on like Twitter and in real life and on Reddit, and just like double check all the URLs and make sure that they're telling you, okay, it's trezor.io and trezor.io. And then the Twitter person is also telling you trezor.io. And then the real life person is also telling you .io. And you look at your URL address bar and you like read every character and it's TREZOR, not like a 0, not like a 1 or anything like that. Not Trezor.russianwebsite.com. not anything like that. Really just Trezor.io. And then, you just follow the website and just go through it. It's fairly nerve-wracking the first time you do it. It's not that much fun. You're just so anxious. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't really know what you're doing, but you want to own Bitcoin. So you just you deal with it. But eventually it just gets better. You realize you did it right. And you were careful, and the anxiety just goes away,
Right. And a lot of these, applications that you're using nowadays are becoming more aware of that, making the user experience better. You should always double check, the first, 4, 5, 6, keys and the last in your wallet ID, before you send anything. There's things like that. And,
you always want to double check.
Part of it is, that you, in this world, you have to double, triple, quadruple check your work. I mean, no one is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
You have to do it yourself. And that's kind of been such a big focus of our conversation today is so much of this time has to be spent. You want to do this. You want to get into it. I'm sorry that there's all these thousands of steps, but we're all doing it together. Validation, verification is such a big aspect of every, kind of area of Bitcoin. In our community, the Bitcoin mining industry, we're dealing with vendors from different countries. We work in this world where global e-commerce is very much at the forefront. Unless I am physically meeting these people at the conference, I don't know if they actually exist.
Yeah.
So the hard thing, but also the important thing is you want to work with a company of people who make sure that they're aware of this. I spend a lot of my time triple checking between LinkedIn, Telegram, WhatsApp, every form of communication. I have people who I can physically ask.
Yeah.
I want you to go visit this vendor. I want you to go visit this source.
Yeah.
So, there's ways around it. And this is a navigation of so many aspects of business you wouldn't believe. It's beyond Bitcoin. I think these problems exist almost in every industry, in every aspect. And with Bitcoin just being the most accelerated, futuristic version of, owning your money, using money, and a lot of aspects, we're just going to see just a more extreme case of how much you have to double, triple check.
Yeah. And I mean, really, this just stems from what we just described as referred to as establishing provenance, making sure that you are where you think you are. It's like when you wake up from, like a coma, it's like, where am I? I don't remember getting here. And then you sort of have to ask people, what day is it? What hospital am I in? You are basically waking up out of a coma every time you visit a new website. And it's up to you to figure out, am I in the right website that I think I am? It's like, well, I remember, I was in, New York. Am I still in New York? And every time you visit a new website, you want to make sure you're going where you think you're going. Mm-hmm. And this is why pretty much every email client now, every chat, pretty much every website now double checks, has you double check the URL that you're going to, because you want to be navigating where you think you're going to go. You want to end up where you think you're going to go. And unfortunately, doing this for the internet is basically, it's just really, really hard unless you trust somebody to tell you, always be giving you the answers. Mm-hmm. And the way this works with web browsers is you have certificates of authority. You have a root certificate where all these names and sort of addresses are tied in, and that comes preloaded into the operating system, and the browser just sort of does that for you. And this is something like Apple and Google and Microsoft and Canonical, which ships Ubuntu. They're the ones that double check this for you. Just because doing it yourself, what are you going to go when you visit Facebook? Are you going to go to Facebook first, knock on their door, ask their engineers is yeah, what's your IP address? And then before your browser goes and fetches the website, double check that the IP address actually matches up. It's first of all, like that's not really how it would even work. But like, hypothetically, it's like you're not going to do that.
Right.
Like that's like
you don't have the time either.
You don't have the time, and it's like you visit so many websites, so like you basically have to trust like these certificates, these CAs, to like be honest. Unfortunately, it's a huge gaping security hole. There's even cases of like these CAs getting hacked themselves and giving out really faulty certificates out, and people would just randomly go, to a website, but because the certificate was messed up, they're actually going to like a Russian server instead of like their e-commerce site.
It happens way more often than you think.
Well, it happens when you hear about it, right. And then sometimes you don't even hear about it.
Exactly.
But establishing provenance, that's like very important. For something like like your e-commerce store, it's like the worst that happens is you just like don't get your package delivered of the shoes you bought, and because the money you actually sent it to some North Korean hackers. But in the case of Bitcoin, you could just lose everything. Right. all your entire coin stash. So it's even more extreme. Like the stakes are even higher, and so it pushes sort of what's actually required. What are the security requirements, and what can actually people do to the most extreme level? Whereas before, like this was just something that was pushed onto the companies that made the operating systems, and like this is why your browser will just do all of this automatically for you. And is it secure? I mean, it works, and that's really what people care about. Like you see the little lock on your screen, on your address bar, telling you that you are actually at Facebook. But it's like, are you at Facebook? Well, I hope Apple put in the right certificate. Yeah. A lot of people are going here. I guess I would hear about it if it was a problem. But it's not like airtight, like there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time and a lot of money making sure that this gets done correctly. But it's not, it's not 100% guaranteed to work. It only works because people put in a ton of time and effort into making sure it does work.
I quickly want to dive into a potential solution for something that we're talking about here. How can we identify who it is we're speaking to, and just being a little bit mindful of our time here.
Oh no, I was going to say that's just like an impossible problem. There's really no good solution for like this, visiting the right website. Like the people in the 90s, like came up with this concept of like a web of trust, where like they would literally have like parties where like people would go and they bring them the little book, and they would write down like other people's like public key, which is basically the identifier, and their name, and like look at like their driver's license or their passport, and it's like okay, I'll John, and his ID is da 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 da, and like they would do this with everyone, and like that's where like it would form like a little web of trust, because everybody was doing this with everybody else, and it's like oh I trust you, let me see your book. You have John in here, I have John in my book, is this the same ID that he gave me? Yeah, it's the same ID. Okay, great. And you would just do that with everyone. But obviously this is like the nerdiest thing ever. Having a they would have this at like conferences and stuff. Mm-hmm. It works, but it's just so much time and like it's just like it was not ever really like a possibility. So for the time being, just use bookmarks and just make sure that the address, make sure you keep your software updated, and you can even make sure you're running a better DNS than the one that your ISP, the default DNS ISP that you're using. Keep your OS updated, and just always be double checking URLs. Yeah. Just be real careful where you're visiting. If you see a random one, don't click in my. I just got a text, and it was hey, I just found an old photo of you, ha ha ha, emoji, and then it's like photo.s, some random like identifier, and obviously he got hacked. Mm-hmm. The hacker sent that text, and they're trying to get me to click on that link, and pretty sure there's probably some malware that would get downloaded to my device were I to press that link. So It's like, yeah, I messaged him back. It's like, I think you got hacked.
Well, one thing I think for businesses that would, be pretty practical and give both parties a little bit more due diligence to what's going on is actually the case for NFTs. I think NFTs are a good way where you can individually, stamp an invoice or something and have a little bit more of like a digital identity tied, that's going to signal that this is, a transaction that was only done by, like, for example, like force-based mining or something.
But you downloaded the NFT from a website, and so you're just back to the original problem.
No, totally. I mean, part of it is you just have to have a little bit of inherent trust and make sure that you're doing the right aspects to do good business.
Yeah.
But
it's just a tough problem. Totally. Unless you put in the time and energy that the companies put in to make sure everything's okay, you just have to trust that somebody did the right thing. It's like bridges. It's like you're trusting that there's somebody looking at the bridge, making sure there's not a bunch of cracks in it, and it's not going to collapse. It's up to standard, but like you're not going to do that. You're just trusting that's somebody's job, like somebody's getting paid to do it, and then you use the bridge happily, to drive to and from work. But this is true of like everything, like the medicine you take, like hopefully somebody got paid to make sure the medicine I'm taking is what I think it is. You get this a lot with food, like there's like stamping and like packaging and certifications. Like, well, I hope someone's making sure that they didn't spray all this food with like glyphosate. It says it's organic, but all kinds of stuff could happen. Real life is complicated, and at the end of the day, you need to put a set of eyes on it. And
on everything, on every aspect of your life. You can do your best to shop organic, but sometimes the best organic food is just going to your farmers, and knowing what's in season.
Totally.
Avoiding, certain types of food, as like a habitual kind of like experience. And, obviously this is the same kind of concepts that we're talking about. Like you have these institutions, you have a lot of good infrastructure that's built, we're trusting that these are in some way the like rocket engineers are the people who are telling you this is the best way to hodl, this is the best way to send your Bitcoin. So, we're hoping that, we're getting a trusted source, but at the end of the day, you don't want to remain ignorant to all this. It's not going to do you any good. And, definitely being even more mindful of the time right now. And I did have a question I wanted to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
It is at some point like a philosophical aspect to Bitcoin, and everyone kind of has their own ethos to what it means to be into this, world, to be immersed into it. And my question for you, before we go is like, why do you choose Bitcoin?
I choose Bitcoin really out of an overwhelming sense of pragmatism. I like being in control, and Bitcoin is the simplest way I can see of being in control of my life. And, I think money is really important. Money is what you use to get other people to do stuff for you when you can't do it yourself. And it's what opens the door to other possibilities, let you live your life on your own terms. And just being in control of your own money is just sort of like the best way to live, in my opinion. And Bitcoin is the best tool that I've recognized so far in all my years of research that gives me this optionality in a way that no other tool gives me. There's like gold or like paper cash, but that's not practical at all. And with Bitcoin, all I have to do is just run a very lightweight piece of software, relatively speaking, and just like check a couple hashes, and I'm good to go. For me, it's I'm very comfortable doing that. It's very intuitive, even. I know not everybody's like this, but for me, that's just what it is. But even beyond that, I also get a really profound sense of satisfaction knowing that I'm helping to support this network that gives other people this ability, gives other people these options that, I don't necessarily need it because I'm very grateful and, have the ability to live in a country that, gives me all these options already. But, billions of other people all over the world don't get these options in the first place. And so, supporting a network that lets people do these things, it's just a very gratifying way to spend my time. And that's sort of what gives me energy and is what, makes me happy to get out of bed. So that's really why I choose Bitcoin. I know that there's other tools that somehow, approximate that as well, but they're not nearly as effective. They usually have all kinds of glaring problems, and we probably need a couple more episodes to go over all of them. Compared to like gold, real estate, art, stocks, other cryptos, cash, bonds, Bitcoin to me just is the most effective and practical way to go about it. And it's really not even close, actually. And I'm just happy that I was able to figure this out on my own before everybody else did. It seems like lots of other people are still trying to figure this out. But to me, that's what it means. That's what I've been doing. And so far, it's, let me meet all these amazing people and have lots of amazing experiences. And I'm just very happy and thankful that I can think of lots of new great people that I'm going to be meeting in the future and lots of new great things that I'll be doing. So I'm looking at it with optimism. I don't think Bitcoin is going to go anywhere. And it's here to stay, and it's how I want to spend my time.
Well said, man. I love it. I love all the words. I love the passion. You're definitely a passionate person when it comes to this, and definitely feel like it comes from, as we had talked about, your computer science background, and just very, very fortunate to have you here today.
Thank you.
I know we didn't get to speak about the Fedimint Project, which I think will be great to have you back to discuss that more.
Sure.
I look forward to watching you continue to develop your Rust skills and your enthusiasm for pushing lightning down people's throats. And most importantly, wishing you luck, on your 2023 endeavors and finding a software engineer job in the future.
Yeah, no, writing Rust, that's definitely on top of my list of goals. And I'm zeroing in on it. So, making progress every day.
Right. Matthias Debernardini, really appreciative of having you on.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
look forward to talking to you again later.
Yeah, likewise.